Today I'm talking about Forged by Fire by the band Firewind. The album was released on January 5th, 2005. It is celebrating its 20th anniversary. Now you may be wondering why I chose this band to do a retro review. It all started a few months ago when I became interested in Greek metal bands. Two of my favorite albums of 2024 were from Greek bands, which were the albums from Rotting Christ and Suicidal Angels. So I became interested in Greek metal bands. Then I released a video where I discovered some new Greek metal bands, and Firewind was one of the first ones I covered. Then I found out the band was led by Gus G, who I had only known as Ozzy Osbourne's guitar player on his Scream album from 2010. But Gus G had a long career before Ozzy. He had this band, a few others, and I'll touch upon that in the video. So I will be basically giving you my first impressions with this album, and I'll go into some of the history behind it. So with that being said, let me get into it. Basically, Firewind is one of those bands that had one of those revolving door lineups with Gus G being the only constant. There were a few members who had some pretty long runs with the band, but one thing about this band was that they changed vocalists often, and this album features a vocalist who only recorded one album with the band. So it makes it unique. The vocalist is named Chadana Chitral Somapala, and he's from Sri Lanka. But the band, they call him Chitty, so I'm going to call him Chitty in this video. This is also the first album with Bob Kasinosis, and he played on the next 6 albums. When this album came out 20 years ago, Gus G was involved in a few projects. He had completed 3 albums with his band Firewind, and another 3 albums with a different metal band he was in called Dream Evil. He quit Dream Evil around this time because he wanted to focus on Firewind, but Gus G was a busy guy as he was involved in a few other bands. He played in a melodic death metal band called Night Rage, which featured ex At the Gates member of frontman Thomas Lindberg, and he had another band called Mystic Prophecy, which is a German-based power metal band, and he also appeared as a guest on various albums. But despite all these projects, Gus has always wanted Firewind to be his top priority. But then again, all the bands I just mentioned also released albums around the same time, within a few months, so Gus G was actually very busy around this time. Let me talk more about some history with the album Forged by Fire. As I mentioned, the band has had lineup issues, especially with the singers. Their previous singer was Stephen Frederick, but he had to leave the band as he found it difficult to tour with the band. The band was under a lot of pressure as they had already booked a tour in Japan, but the band got lucky and they found a new singer who we will call Chitty. They also had some issues with their European label Massacre Records, and they couldn't tour Europe due to a lack of support. So that was how they came up with the album title, Forged by Fire. They went through some difficult times, but they came out ahead with a new lineup and a new label. As for the music, when I first researched this band for my Discovering Greek Metal Bands video, I saw them listed as power metal. So maybe they evolved into a power metal band, but this is more of a metal band. I read an interview with Gus G. He said that the sound was heavy metal with modern elements, so I would agree with that. When the album was finally released, it did pretty well. It entered the top 100 in Japan and got positive reviews in Europe. I don't think they ever charted in America. To be honest, I had never heard of them when I lived in the US, so I think they were more popular in Europe and Japan. Now, when asked about the new vocalist, Gus G said that Chitty was more of a melodic vocalist as opposed to the previous vocalist, Stephen Frederick, who Gus G considered to be more of a shouter. Gus G also went to compare the new vocalist as a cross between Dio, Klaus Meine, and Tony Martin. So I thought that was pretty cool. I could agree with that. And finally, during the aforementioned interview, Gus G said he felt this was the first time Firewind felt like a real band and not a studio project, and that the band had great chemistry. So let me talk about the songs. The album is 44 minutes long and has 10 songs. There were a few surprise guests, so I will reveal them as I go through the songs. The opening track was called Kill to Live. First thing you hear are some heavy groove metal style guitar riffs. Sounded like something you would hear on a Pantera album, but then the song started to sound more like traditional heavy metal, but on the heavier side. Gus G played some harmonics on the guitar, and that's what made it sound like a groove metal. I also noticed the new vocalist can sing in a style that's both very heavy, but also melodic. I think they wanted to start off the album with a very heavy banger as a way of saying, look at us now, this is the rebirth of the band. The next song was called Beware the Beast, and this was another song that was very heavy, but also in a heavy metal style. They blended heaviness with melody on this track. This was more traditional metal, something like you would hear on a typical Dio album, as opposed to the groove metal of the previous song. It was another banger with some fast drum beats and powerful vocals. This was also the first song where you can hear the new keyboard player. Next is Tyranny. This was more of a straightforward metal song with arena rock qualities. I like the guitar riff that goes in this circular motion. It was the kind of song that would go over well with a live audience as it had some big sing-alongable choruses. I also like the straightforward drumming as it worked well with the song. Then we have the song The Forgotten Memory. This song has the first guest. It is James Murphy from bands like Death, Obituary, and Testament. He plays a guitar solo, and I thought it was cool as someone with a thrash and death metal background contributed to this type of album. The song was also a good fit for him as it was one of the heavier and faster paced songs. Chitty sang in a lower range, and there were some more aggressive vocals in some parts. But the song also had that yin and yang factor as it had a very melodic chorus that contrasted with the heaviness of the rest of the song. Next is Hate World Hero. This was the first power ballad. The intro has softer singing with arpeggiated chords that went into a heavier section. This was another one. You can hear the keyboards, and it reminded me of a band like Whitesnake during the late 80s hair metal period. I thought it was a good song because it had a big chorus as well as some virtuoso playing by Gus G. I could also hear the bass guitar in the song. Next is Escape from Tomorrow. The first part of the song was very heavy, bordering on speed metal, but then it took a turn in the first verse and it became very melodic. The song picked up the pace in the pre-chorus with a very fast drum beat that was similar to a typical power metal song. I think this was the first song I heard by them where it felt it was kind of like a power metal song. The lighter sounds in the verse section made it sound more like 80s glam metal as well. Then we have an instrumental track called Feast of the Savages. So this one had the second guest, and that was Marty Friedman, and he plays a few solos. It was a pretty heavy song. I noticed Gus G playing some of those harmonics that made it sound like groove metal, something like Machine Head or something like that. And there were also some more keyboard sections in this song. There was even a keyboard solo, which was pretty cool. I'm actually glad they did an instrumental like this because sometimes heavy metal bands don't like to include them. It was the type of instrumental that you would hear on a typical guitarist solo album. So I thought that was pretty cool. Burn in Hell is the next song. This was another one of their heaviest songs. I would even say bordering on thrash metal. The new vocalist is showing off more of an aggressive side with some angry vocals. The song is darker and heavier than most, but they still had melodic elements in the chorus as well as some keyboard sounds. The penultimate song is Perished in Flames. This one was very different. It was much slower than the others and had a bass guitar in the intro, reminding me a lot of Dawn Patrol by Megadeth. It was pretty cool because this was the first time I heard the band playing in a slow and heavy fashion. I like the song because it sounded like one of those Tony Martin era Black Sabbath songs. I think Gus G does really well when he's playing slower guitar riffs, but it's not all slow. The song takes a turn towards the end and gets really fast and heavy. The last song was called The Land of Eternity. This was another power ballad. I think it was the best ballad on the album because it was a lot softer, it was much more melodic, and I think the vocals were a lot better. The vocalist also gives more of an emotional delivery. So that is all. I'm glad I decided to review this album because it was a little out of my comfort zone. Usually when I do these retro or anniversary reviews, they're for albums that were from my childhood or ones I bought and listened to 30 years ago or more. In other words, they're for bands I was very familiar with. But this time I went with a band that I didn't know, a band that I just found out about. And I'm glad I did because I probably should do this more often. Because even if the views might not be as high, or maybe they will be, I don't know how videos are going to perform. But I enjoyed, basically I enjoy finding new music. So thanks for watching. please give the video a like. If you missed my videos on discovering Greek metal bands, I'll stick them right here, over there. And probably by the time this one comes out, this one might have, I'll be working on the third one. So thanks for watching. Give the video a like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. I'll see you in the next one.